Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com, and I'm here with
Dr. Howie Jacobson of AskHowie.com.
And we always make the disclaimer that neither of us are medical doctors. I'm the PhD psychologist type, and you are the PhD education type, right, buddy? Health education?
Yep.
Okay. So I would like to talk about something important and interesting today. Would you?
Well, given a preference of important and interesting and trivial and boring, I choose important and interesting.
Okay. We could talk about something trivial and boring afterwards. What's exceptionally important and interesting when you're trying to stop overeating is that you can't start tomorrow. You can only ever use the present moment to be healthy. And that sounds a little bit trite. You've probably heard that before. But I've got 11 reasons that you can't start tomorrow. I'd like to go through them, and Howie, once I have, we could talk about anything else that you have or anything that really strikes you. Sound good?
Yep, I'm all in for it.
Okay. So when it comes to eating healthy, you can't start tomorrow because you're always either reinforcing or extinguishing your cravings the way the nervous system works. There's no standing still. Most people think that they're going to be in the same place tomorrow, but the way the nervous system works, you're always either reinforcing or extinguishing your cravings and addictions. There's no standing still. One of the other reasons you can't start tomorrow, the second reason, is that binge today starts tomorrow and encourages a feast and famine diet mentality, which is self-reinforcing and spirals downhill. You're telling your brain that you live in a feast and famine environment. And when that's the case, when food is available, it wants to gorge because it never knows when food's going to be available again. You can't start tomorrow because your word is your bond and you committed to your food rules at a time when you're of sound mind and body and had both the fortitude and intellect to think through what was best. So your food rules are actually sacred. You can't start tomorrow because if you give your food monster an inch, it'll take a mile and you know it. You can't start tomorrow because by binging today and starting tomorrow, you're setting up a situation where you'll have to endure hundreds of miserable first days. The first day when you stop binging is the worst. Your dopamine is lowest or fluctuating the worst, and your blood sugar is the most destabilized. You're cranky, your digestion is bad, you're bloated. Why not get through that first day once and for all and just keep going? The sixth reason you can't start tomorrow is that your reptilian brain doesn't really know tomorrow. It only knows right now. The present is all that exists. It's the only time you can ever put food in your mouth. The seventh reason you can't start tomorrow is because it builds momentum in the wrong direction. People think that if you binge today and start tomorrow that you'll be able to make up for it pretty quickly. But the truth is it doesn't really work. And usually what happens in my experience we've worked with over 2,000 clients now, people wind up taking about a week to get back to where they were, as opposed to where they would have been if they had just kept going. For example, if you're driving from New York to Los Angeles, deciding to binge for a day is kind of like driving in the wrong direction back towards New York at twice the speed. It takes a little while to get back to where you would have been if you just kept going. The eighth reason is that binging today will screw up whatever healthy numbers you're tracking, demolish your confidence, sleep, healing, and finances. People spend much more money on binge food than they think. It takes longer to recover. It almost always interferes with their sleep. It almost always interferes with their body healing the things that it needs to heal. And it makes them feel like their impulses have a lot more credence than they should. They begin to feel helpless and powerless. So it interferes with their confidence. The ninth reason you can't start tomorrow is because if you binge today after having the thought of binging today, you're going to have stronger cravings tomorrow and be more likely to think, I'll start tomorrow. That's the principle of neuroplasticity. Will have reinforced both those states of being. The 10th reason is that binging today will isolate you socially and put you in a crabby mood with friends, family, and loved ones. And you might say or do things that you can't undo. The 11th reason is that binging today creates feelings of depression, anxiety, and hopelessness, whereas sticking to your plan builds confidence. So I say always use the present moment to be healthy. If you just keep coming back to the present moment to stick to your plan, you'll be building what I call your binge-free now muscle. And the more you flex that muscle, the stronger it gets in the future, even though your food monster would have you believe that it's going to get you eventually when you're weaker. You're actually going to get stronger and stronger. The bottom line is, when you're in a hole, stop digging. You can't start tomorrow. You can only ever use the present moment to be healthy. What do you think, buddy?
In the middle there, it started sounding like a prayer.
Yeah.
Well, like call and response. Another reason you can't start tomorrow. Like I knew all these, but putting them together is like more powerful than just 11 times each one. So I'm not really having a cognitive response right now. I'm feeling on a gut level the power and truth of what you're saying.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a little meditation, or maybe it's a little sermon. Maybe it's a little mini sermon about why you can't start tomorrow to overcome people's reluctance to start right now. I'm glad it had an impact on you.
Yeah, and what it's bringing up for me. So I've been reading sort of meditative stuff. I'm reading a book by I think a neuroscientist, basically explaining how neuroscience is just caught up with Buddhism around the idea like there is no such a thing as a self. It's a imaginary construct of the left brain that's always just trying to find problems to solve. And one of the points that he keeps making is that there is like the past and the future don't exist unless you're thinking about them.
Hmm.
One of the exercises he would have you do is mindful eating because it's such a present oriented activity. You can really tell when you've just finished a bowl of something and you're like, oh, it's like your brain doesn't even wake you up until it's gone. And then you're like, well, I got to go get more or I got to wash the dish.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible to binge mindfully, like to be in the present moment and do something that is contravening all these 11 reasons and probably some more.
I don't know if it's possible to binge mindfully on whole foods that grow, to binge mindfully on like our natural species specific diet. I've met practitioners who talk about mindful eating potato chips or Doritos or something like that. And I think that what happens when you do that is you do tend to slow down somewhat. But I also think that there are chemicals and concentrations of things in those foods that don't exist in nature that kind of turn off your hungry and full meters and stimulate your appetite in a way that mindful eating can't completely compensate for. But I always think it's better to eat mindfully than to not eat mindfully. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. When you're mindful, it's not like, okay, I'm choosing to eat the potato chips or whatever the binge food is. When you are mindful, you're much less likely to do it. It's harder to indulge these unwanted impulses. Being in the moment, being in the now, it feels like a stronger position from which to make decisions,
Mm-hmm.
even than, okay, I'm thinking about like what I want to look like at the beach next year or to fit into that outfit for the wedding. Right? Like goals are great and having the big why is great. There's something about now is just real.
I totally agree with you. And just to underscore that, I think that what you're describing is that when you're really present in the moment, that you're more aware of wanting genuine nutrition. And so you are less likely to have, a bag of potato chips or chocolate bar. You become more in touch with what your body really needs. And your body doesn't really need, a bag of potato chips or a chocolate bar. Your body needs whole natural foods, right? So I think that that's probably true. I run into a lot of people who try to eat completely mindfully without any type of boundaries. At least the people that come to me, because I have a very rules-based approach and a very boundaries-based approach. I try to work with people who really want to do that, and I find it doesn't work 100%. I find that most people at some times have to say, well, that's not food, at least it isn't for me, or at least not in that volume or quantity. You know what I'm saying? I think the boundaries are, I think we want to eat mindfully between the lines, the same way that we drive mindfully between red lights. I think the boundaries are important.
Right. And I think the way I'm using mindfully is a little different than mindful eating. I'm really talking about mindfulness is for me being in the now. I don't want to belabor this because I think these 11 reasons are so powerful. So I don't want to undercut them with legalistic definitional arguments, but just this idea of now is all we ever have.
Right.
To me, that's mindfulness. My memories of the past are just highly selective stories. My predictions about the future are clearly fantasy. This is the moment in which I exist. I have power.
If you're going to do it, you're going to do it now.
Yeah. Luckily, no one is ever going to listen to this in the past or the future.
That's true.
It's not like, now, you've missed it.
All you have is now, but it's always now.
It's always now.
Yeah. Anything else?
Not about this. Well, I guess just Hosanna, amen.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.